All right, George Kilpatrick, Inspiration for the Nation. We are joined by Larry Martin, the retired Vice President for Program Development at Syracuse University. Larry, the world of sports is mourning the loss of number 44, Jim Brown. And when I thought of Jim Brown, I thought of the work that you have done at the university, especially with coming back together, something that Jim Brown definitely participated in. When you think about his legacy and especially his giving back and coming back together with the Black and Latino alumni at Syracuse University, what do you think?
He was just an incredible individual to me. He was larger than life. I think the thing that sticks out the most with Jim is he was unafraid to speak truth to power, whereas a lot of current athletes, or I shouldn't say a lot of them, some of them will not speak out on obvious issues. So Jim was not like that whatsoever. He came back to Syracuse numerous times. He hosted us with alumni functions at his house in Los Angeles. So he was supportive. He was involved. He was committed because he certainly wanted Syracuse to be better for current and future alumni than it was for him.
You know, when I think about that, what might be some things that we didn't see in the public that because you had a more intimate relationship with him that would either surprise people or some insights that we just don't know? Because you got to know him.
Yes, yeah, I was fortunate in that situation. He was very loyal. I mean, once you became a friend of Jim Brown, it was a friend for life, but it wasn't an easy kind of situation. And people don't realize how intelligent he was. I mean, he was a good student, and when you talked with him, when you interacted with him, that would come out immediately. And he was they had so many facets to his life. Like people would never know that Jim Brown was a member of ROTC when he was at Syracuse. And during graduation in 1957, there's a photo of Jim Brown leading his classmates through Archbold Stadium, and he's got his Army uniform on, and he's holding an American flag, similar to what they would do at the Olympics, a big American flag. And most Americans would not believe that Jim Brown was ever in ROTC of any other event. So he was just a remarkable guy. He stayed relevant throughout his entire life. Whereas some athletes, they have a lifespan that is very short, and then another generation comes up, and another generation comes up, and they're forgotten. That was not true with Jim Brown. He was relevant throughout his entire life. People that never saw him play football or in a movie, you would know him. Young kids, 12, 13, 14 years old, if you walk down the street, they would know, oh, there was Jim Brown. And they were so young, they didn't see him play. Their parents didn't see him play. Their grandparents may have seen him play. So he was unique in that sense.
Larry, when you think about what he faced at Syracuse during the time that he was here, obviously it wasn't easy for him individually. Did that impact the ability for him to actually come back and be a part of the university, or was he just always a part of the university no matter how things were for him when he was here?
That was certainly a part about it, and he spoke truthfully about that. He told me one time he was tested here at Syracuse. When he first came to Syracuse, Jim Brown was 16 years old. He was a young kid, and probably his first trip outside of Long Island, you know. And he first came here, he didn't make the starting team. He was on the second team. And it made him think he wasn't good enough for college football, where it was something else that was holding him back. And that was probably prejudice, racism, what have you. And then when the person ahead of him got hurt, Jim Brown was put in the game, and that was it.
That was it.
That was it. There was no stopping him whatsoever. So while he was here, he was tested in so many different ways. And one of the things he told me, I remember the last time I saw him, in fact, he mentioned, he said, When he came to Long Island and went to school there, he decided he was never going to be treated like a second-class citizen. He was always going to fight for his rights and fight for justice. And that was part of his legacy from then on.
Obviously, he has a strong legacy here in Syracuse. And one of the things that I've said is that when he came back for coming back together, the reunion of Black and Latino alumni, he was very approachable. He was part of the mix. He wasn't, how do you put it? He wasn't putting on airs or anything like that. He was just himself and with the people, if you will. And I thought that was something unique about him.
Absolutely. I think because of the coming back together idea of what we were trying to do, he realized that we were trying to make Syracuse better than when he was at Syracuse in 1957 and all that other stuff. So he bought into the program, and he wanted to do something that was meaningful for Black and Latino alumni, and I think that's why he was so involved. And it wasn't one of those things we trying to portray SU as being perfect. No, this never happened. Absolutely it happened, because we heard it from not only Jim Brown, but many other African-American athletes who went to school back then.
Larry Martin, retired Vice President of Program Development at Syracuse University, remembering number 44, the legendary Jim Brown, here on Inspiration for the Nation. Larry, anything you want to leave us with in terms of the memory of Jim Brown and how we might remember him, as complicated as he was?
You hit that right. He was complicated. I think just to have that kind of determination, integrity, and always fighting for justice and never accepting the status quo, and using your platform, no matter what it is, to contribute to making this a better place for all of us.
Legacy of number 44, Jim Brown, here on Inspiration for the Nation. Larry Martin, thank you so much for helping us to remember a piece of Jim Brown that many may not have known. Here,
it was an honor. Thank you.
Inspiration for the Nation.
About his life. And because we knew so much, I'm talking about Robert Hill and myself, because we talked to so many alumni, thousands of them. He said, man, you guys ought to write a book. And he said, if you write a book, I'll write the foreword. And I remember him saying that, man, you ought to write a book. You know all this information, institutional information, institutional history. He said, I'll write the foreword. So that's what I remember about him, in addition to many of the other things. Just you'll never see another person like him for sure.
Yeah. Are you going to write the book?
I'd have to sit down with Robert Hill, because Robert's a writer. I'm not. I'm like a doer and that kind of thing. But I'd have to sit down with him to say, hey, is this something you want to do? Because, as I said, you talk to so many different alumni, and they share what it was like. Alumni in the 30s, alumni in the 40s, alumni in the 50s, alumni, Black alumni, Latino alumni, white alumni, North, South, East, West, and they all add to this puzzle. So when you're done, you know more about the university than almost anybody, because you've heard so much. And then when you hear stories, here's one story. I remember Jim Brown. We were in the Carrier Dome, and we were sitting down. I was giving him a tour. We were sitting down in the seats, and a guy walked by who used to be his coach. And Jim said, you see that guy right there? He said, yeah. He said he had no use for Black people. And he said, and he was looking at him. He said, look at him. He said, he can't even look me in my eyes. And I never said anything to anybody, because he was a fairly popular guy, you know? But I remember Jim sitting there, I'm next to him, and he pointed out the guy. I see that guy? Yeah, man, he had nothing to do with us. And then it was confirmed by Manny Breland. And then another guy said, nope, guy wanted nothing to do with us. That's the kind of stuff those guys went through. And I only think that what if Jim Brown had quit? I mean, can you imagine the greatest athlete in the world wasn't good enough for Syracuse University? Can you imagine that?
Don't make no sense. Don't make no sense.
Oh, man. But at the same time that there were these guys, Roy Simmons Sr. and Roy Simmons Jr. were like family to him.
Mm.
And they supported him. And particularly Roy Simmons Sr. was like a father to Jim. And when things were tough, you know, he would sit down and talk to him and all that other kind of stuff. So you had that balance of these knuckleheads who were bigoted and narrow-minded. Then you had these other people that were just wonderful, wonderful human beings. So yeah, he had an unbelievable life. And it all started here in Syracuse. So it was a thrill to know him and know him as well as I did.
So it sounds, you know, it's just really, really, it's always good to get inside the man, right? And to really understand who he is.
And one of the things he said too is, I remember the last time we met, he said he always wanted to be relevant.
Mm.
He said, I don't want to be a broke down ex-athlete. He said, I want to be relevant. And when I talk with people, especially reporters that wanted to interview him, I said, you got to talk about something meaningful. Talk about politics. Talk about world issues. Don't talk about, Jim, when you scored that last touchdown, man, you ran, because you're going to get a very brief interview. Yeah, that was good. Yeah, good. See you later. But if you talk about meaningful issues, you'll get a conversation, you know. So that's part of who he was.
Legacy of number 44.
Yeah. Unbelievable.